You could create a grid of cubes doing this, actually. Why don't we do that? So we haven't touched on Unity much, it's all been console programming. So let's actually do something there, and let's create a bunch of cubes. Just delete this one, and let's create one. So let's right click in the hierarchy, go to 3D object, create a cube, and let's reset its position to the center. And let's say that we are going to say add one on the X and Y and so on until it's done. So first of all, we need a variable to associate ourselves with that game object. So how we have integer and so on, we now need a way to get the cube. And that data type is called game object. Let's call it cube. It could be called anything, but that makes the most sense to me. And let's save it, go back to Unity, and look at our script. So at the moment, everything here is still invisible. We've created this cube variable, but we don't know how to link it up to this cube. So let's go ahead and make this public. How I mentioned before that if it's public, it's accessible anywhere, really. So if it's accessible anywhere, perhaps Unity can see it. And that's exactly right. So we look at this bottom corner here, we can see cube now has nothing attached to it, but now we can attach something. So let's click this little circle next to it, which is the context sensitive menu. So we click it, and it comes up with all the things that could go into that slot. In this case, we want our cube. So we double click that, and we're done. Another way is to drag and drop something from the hierarchy into it, to the inspector. So if we click and hold our cube in the hierarchy and start moving it, drag this into the slot, it will also update that way. So those are the two ways. If we save it again and go back into our code, now we need to do something with this cube. Whoops. Okay, so let's get rid of these. We're not going to use the array anymore for the time being. What we want to do is get the let's just move it for now. So we've got the cube and we need its position. So let's go to Unity and see, what can be done about that. Let's click our cube and look at the inspector. Let's just drag this out a bit. We've got a couple of things here. We've got the transform, we've got a mesh filter, we have a box collider, and we have a mesh renderer. Let's just concern ourselves with transform for now. So that's a big component, and it's got three properties. It's got position, it's got rotation, and it's got scale. Position is where it moves. So if we were to move it up, we can see that value on the Y change in the inspector. So undo that. If we were to rotate, we can see those values updating when we rotate it. And if we were to use scale, we can see those update as well. So we want this position. So the transform's position. Right. As I mentioned before, with array's length, the length is associated with the array. And we got that through the dot operator. So maybe we can use the dot operator again, but with our cube. Let's try it. So we click it. And we've got a bunch of options, and let's see if we can find anything that looks like what we need. Tag string transform. The transform attached to this game object. Right. So if we go back to Unity, we can see it's got a transform. So maybe it means that. Let's go back to our code, and let's say if it means this, then surely we can click dot again to access one of these, right? Let's try that. Let's click dot. Okay, it's given us a bunch of options. Let's have a look. Right, we've got we've got rotation. It looks promising. Do we have position? Yes, we do. And this is the position of the transform in world space. Who knows what world space is? Let's not worry about that. Let's just, praise the Lord that we can actually access the position in our code through this. Pretty cool. Right. This is a vector. And a vector, has a direction and a magnitude, which is just a fancy way of saying it's got a position and it's got the potential to move in a direction. Okay, and because it's a vector 3, it means it has x, y, and z coordinates. But a vector could technically have one dimension or two, doesn't really matter. Okay, so transform's position, let's say we're going to make it equal, because it's a vector, same with arrays, we need to have a new vector 3, just in the way we have a new integer. And then we need to pass in its x, y, and z coordinates, or its x and y, or so on. Let's say it's going to equal... Sorry, my cat is walking all over me. Okay. The current position of our cube, but let's say the current x position, so we can do dot x. If we go to Unity, we can see that position has that x here, same with the y and the z, so we just keep pressing dot until we find what we need. So cube.transform.position.x, and let's say plus column, so that this thing's going to loop multiple times. Right, now, comma, because we need to do x, y, and z, let's get the cube.transform.position.y plus the index, just using them as an example, and then comma, and let's say we're not going to manipulate the z, so let's just give it a 0. Or let's just give it the default position the cube had of z. So cube.transform.position.z, and let's give it a full stop, semicolon. So that's a very long line, but that's okay. Let's save it, go back into Unity, let it recompile. Let's bring this back out a bit. I'm going to bring this down so you can see it a bit more clearly. So now we can see what happens to our object when we hit play. Alright, it's disappeared somewhere. Where'd it go? Let's double click it. Okay, it's around here somewhere. Where's our camera? Okay, so it's gone really high up actually. So the camera's position is at 0, 1, minus 10, but our cube is at 450 by 450. And that's really because we've added 1 to our x and y according to our for loop structure that we've got here. So yeah, that's quite cool. We can use for loops to move things around. Interesting. Perhaps we want to see this over time instead of all at once. Perhaps we want to get those intermediate steps. And for that, you can create what's known as a coroutine.